like a craft beer through a pint glass. These are the gays of our lives. A show where Lisa and Avery get out their gay decoder rings to decipher the gay alphabet and bridge the gap between the older and younger LGBTQ community and everyone fucking else. And now here are your hosts, Lisa and Avery. Don't blame them.
You know, now the intersex community is really pushing for them, there not to be surgeries. I got asked recently about a girl that was a tween and had found out that she's gone through multiple surgeries. She's early teenager, hasn't hit puberty yet, may have hit puberty early, but has already had like 6 or 7 surgeries. And they said, what's your take on that? And I said, everything that I've learned, I wish people wouldn't touch the baby when it comes out. Wait for it to go through puberty, and then figure out what's going on because their bodies change so much, and let them have a say in how they're feeling and have that narrative with them. And they may say to you, I don't feel male or female, or I'd like to be both, or I'd like to be non-binary. Or and yes, are these difficult conversations to have with your kid? I can only imagine, and absolutely. But this poor girl's going to grow up, and if she does feel differently, she's been operated on 7 times. How do you fix that in your 20s or your 30s? And how will she have a viable sex life? And how will she? These are all things that we don't talk about at all.
Yeah.
And they're all very.
Oh, sorry. You lived as a gay male, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's not like trans, like Avery felt like I am a man. Right. You lived as a gay man, and then you were kind of forced to become a woman, per se.
Yeah, because I was willing to leave NIH. I told somebody the other day, I said, I'm not mad at the trajectory my life has gone in. But I write a blog, and I've had to deal in the last 2 years a lot. You know, starting the documentary, my parents came to me and they said, we don't want you to tell your story. And I said, well, but you've raised me with the notion that if people don't talk about their problems openly, even though we didn't as a family, but if you don't talk about it, solutions can't be found. And if, you know, my mother had knee issues her whole life. She was basically disabled her whole life. And she was doing these things that were you know, I can't speak right now, but monumental things in her life that she was told you'll never be able to do. You'll never be able to walk again. You'll never do and she was hitting all these things. And I said, your story is really important and you should be talking about it. You shouldn't be hiding that because, as we mentioned earlier, with education, you have growth, right? If we don't educate people about the LGBTQ community and everything in it, and we don't talk about our stories, and we don't shine the light that we have on the inside, people aren't going to know about it. And if they don't know about it, they're going to continue through life in a fog, really, right? And I've always said, take this, for example, intersex people, I found out in England when I was there, we have higher blood sugars. Now in America, they'll say you're diabetic or you're pre-diabetic. That may not be so, because my normal, when I came back to the United States and started to try and do my own doctoring and getting the doctors I needed, I was at 400 whenever I did my sugar draw, above 400. And my doctor finally said, I don't know if I'd call it, even the doctor in London said, I don't know if I'd call it diabetes because most intersex people, both genders, have higher blood sugars. He's like, when you came in for surgery, your blood sugar was in the 800 range. 600 would be a sugar coma for most adults that aren't intersex. He goes, but your liver's great. Your kidneys are awesome. You don't have any protein spills in your urine. He's like, I can't explain it because you're very different than a regular diabetic that's in their 40s, that's just female or male. And he said, shouldn't we be looking at intersex people and say, well, how are they functioning at 800 when they're sick and 400 normally? While somebody that's in a regular, so then that opened up a whole nother thing, right? Then I started talking to theologists and friends that were really into the faith and kind of Christian. And I said, I went and spoke at a church one weekend. I was invited to go speak at a church. And I'm standing up the church and I started about my faith and my Christianity and how that helped me so much. And I said, one of the things that I really struggle with is so many in our community will say, I was raised Christian, but he hasn't been here for me. Look at all the stuff that I've suffered and gone through. He's not here for me. And I'm like, he never left you.
Nope.
You're struggling with all this inner stuff, but he's the one person you could go to. And even though he's not viable and right in front of you and intangible, that you need to believe in something. I don't care if at this point you believe in an Etch-a-Sketch, but you're going to need something to get you through the adult portion of your life, because life is hard and it sucks. And we're all going to go through something on this plane. You may not go through what I'm going through, but I don't have breast cancer and I don't have leukemia and I don't have, it doesn't mean that you're not going to know somebody that's going, we're all going to go through a major struggle on this plane in this life. So you need to have something that you can believe in. So that's how I started this talk at the church. And I was taking questions throughout kind of the talk. I probably should have waited and just answered them all at the end, but it was one of the first public things I'd done as an advocate. And this woman said, it's an interesting story. How can you even call yourself Christian? And I said, well, God doesn't make mistakes. And I said, let me ask you a question. She said, what? And the congregation is there. And I said, by a show of hands, how many in this church believe that God created everything on heaven and earth? Everything, from the smallest insect to the tallest tree to everything in between. Who in here believes that he created absolutely everything on the earth? And of course, everybody raised their hands. And I said, okay, the parrotfish in the ocean changes its gender mid-cycle of its life. It goes from male to female.
I didn't know that.
The clownfish,
I didn't know that either.
the female, has its baby and then becomes a male and raises the clownfish, right? Finding Nemo really was Disney's first trans story, if you want to think
wow.
about it.
Yeah.
So there's a blue whale. There's a blue whale just in the last year that they've designated the XXY gene in. Calico cats are born female, but occasionally you will get a male calico cat. And when that male calico cat is born, it's XXY.
Huh.
Why would he create intersex? I don't even want to say anomalies, because I really don't feel that way, but why would he create intersexualism in other species here on Earth, in plants, in trees, in animals, and not in humans? And I said, so how can you be a Christian and believe in creationism, but believe that in humans, he just created XX and XY? And I left that talk kind of on that endpoint. And the same woman came up to me later and she said, I am so sorry. And I said, don't be sorry. Just take the information, go home and Google it, read about it. There are tons of books out there. Invest in people's story. When people tell you about their life, listen with an open heart and mind, because we're all viable and we're all out there. And you can't believe that a parrotfish changes its gender mid-cycle, but it's not going to happen in a human. That's just, and so that's kind of where I push from now directively. Like, I just go, look,
And
we're here.
I'm a Christian as well, and it's sad that a lot of these Christians want to pick and choose what they want to believe.
Right.
Homosexuality is wrong, but I went to a Pentecostal church for a long time, and my minister got up there once because I had talked to him about this, and he got up there and he started preaching about, gluttony's a sin, and he was a little bit overweight at the time, and he goes, I'm a sinner, but I'm no different than a homosexuality if you want to look at it that way. A homosexual that's a sin. He goes, it's no different. So how are you to say? And it blows my mind, but that's a whole nother topic on Christianity, that we could go on for another hour.
Right. And at Pride, when I got on the board at Pride, I tell them all the time, because we've had a couple of meetings and we're in the midst of trying to figure out during COVID, are we going to have a Pride in Orlando? And we're one of the biggest prides in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are as a board, and we're struggling because we don't know where Orlando is going to be in October. And they asked us when we joined the board, they said, what's your vision for Pride moving forward, right? And there are all these different organizations like World Pride, and which is a combination of all the prides all over the globe. And I said, as an intersex woman, I would like to eventually get to the point where our prides are because we're human, right? We're having a human pride because we're all fucking alive and intermixing and intertwining. And I said, I would love for that day. I said, I probably won't be here to see it, but it would be great if people would just converge and be like, we're alive and we're humans. And it doesn't matter who we're sleeping with, what's in our pants, what's behind our shirt, if we have breasts, if we don't, if we have a sex organ, if we don't, if I'm sleeping with him or her or it or they or whoever.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great to get to that point and just be like, we're alive.
Yeah.
Amidst everything that we go through, we've made it. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate that we get to have love, period, no matter who it comes from. And somebody on the board was like, yeah, that's great in theory. And I was like, I get it. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It may not happen in 10 years. I get it. But you asked and I told you.
Yeah.
I would love to just meet somebody and say, that's my friend and she's wonderful. He's my friend and he's great. They are my people and I love them. And then in the medical community, to be like, we got all these things we have to figure out. Let's start figuring it out. Yeah. And not collecting a paycheck, but doing what we were told we need to do, which is ensure that everybody lives a viable, healthy life.
Yeah, wow. You just went through like the whole journey, even to just like, and it's just crazy because it just shows how much can happen in your life, really, like throughout it. Like, not everything happens before you're 20 or before you're 30. And it's like something I've been trying to explain to a lot of people in the younger community, like LGBTQAI, all of them. It's like, you think you're going through a lot. QAI. But like also like, you're going through a lot now, but like you have no idea what your life looks like 20 years down the road as like our whole culture evolves to accept us. And also some of it still kind of keeps trying to spit you out. And it's just insane. Like, I think your story is such a testament to that.
I think life in general and I use a lot of analogies, even in my blog and even just in talking, but lately I've run into so many people that are intersex and they're like, you're doing great things and we want to get behind you. And you're like, oh, I used to say, and my mom laughs, I was like, I don't want to be the face of intersex. I don't want to be the face of XXY, right? But then I'm like, but nobody else in our community is coming forward to talk about it. And if they are, they're pinpointing, just like we just said the Christians do, they're pinpointing what in the XXY illness is affecting them, and they're talking about that, but they're not talking about everything that could be happening to everybody in that intersex spectrum. And it's a wide spectrum, right? You have people that are in like autism. You have people that come out and they're like, my kid's intersex and autistic. And then you'll have somebody and be like, well, I don't know anything about that because my kid doesn't have those delays. And then you'll have somebody that says, I feel inherently female. I feel inherently male, and I don't want to be called female. Like, it's this jungle, right? And I said recently, my life, even though I didn't sign up for it, you have to start to think, maybe this is my purpose. Maybe this is my message. Maybe I am supposed to be out there talking about it. But it certainly feels like remember those rides that we all had at the park when we were a kid? They were kind of like carousels, but you'd get on them and we'd all kind of lay off on our back and drag our head and you'd spin them around real fast. And they were metal.
Oh, the roundhouses.
Right. So I said, life is a lot like getting on and getting off one of those, because throughout your life, you'll get back on it and be like, fuck.
Right.
And then you'll be like, okay, I got to get off. And you're a little dizzy and you like deal with what you have to deal with. And then you find yourself being pulled back on and you're like, well, it was fun. And you get back on it. And then you're like, well, crap. And you get back off and you're like, my head hurt, but that's life, right? We all struggle. We all get right back on and get right back off and do what we need to do and get right back on and get right back off. And so it's like, think of your life like a carousel, right? Sometimes you're going to get back on that carousel and get a really pretty horse. But sometimes you're going to get back on that carousel and you're going to have the ugliest animal on the carousel.
Right.
You're not going to want to ride it. And you're not going to want to, you're going to be bitchy and mean and nasty. But you got to get back, as they say, you got to get back on that horse, right? You got to get on it. And you got to put your seatbelt on and you just got to hold on. And the next time you get off and get back on it, maybe you'll get in that really pretty carriage and get to not sit on a horse at all. But
one of those rising carriages, those are the coolest ones. So.
But I mean, you got to get on it, right? And that music's always going to continue, that kind of loopy, crazy
circus.
But
I mean, it's intriguing. It's intriguing. You talk about the doctors and how they don't want to do this certain stuff and they don't believe in it. And I've experienced that with other breast cancer survivors that want to go flat like I did.
Right.
And these doctors are like, no, you'll change your mind. You're going to want boobs, or they make their decision for them. And that's something, that has to change across the board for every human.
Even from you feel, I hear people all the time that are like, I have cancer and they want me to go on this chemo drug, but I've done my research on that chemo drug and it causes a myriad of other issues and I don't want to go on that. And they struggle, they go back to that doctor, and because they feel locked into that relationship that we talked about earlier, they eventually go, well, what are my other choices? I can't get to Texas, or I can't get to one of the better cancer treatment centers in America, and my insurance isn't going to cover it. And I guess I have to take this chemo drug. That shouldn't be the case. You should be able to go to your doctor and be like, absolutely not. You're a doctor. Let's figure something else out.
See, and I was very blessed. My doctors were good with that, but there are all these other women that their doctors just leave extra skin, even though they say, I want to go flat. They're like, well, you may change your mind, and they just leave extra skin. And doctors should not be allowed to tell us what we're going to do with our life.
I agree with that. You also need to be able to go to a doctor and say, also because of all these issues with my insurance and where I live and what I can afford and what can I see, your doctor needs to say, okay, well, these are your options. And if you don't like them, let's, kind of look at something else, or a great case in point. And I'm a little bit different, and people are like, you're so confident and all this. And where's that confidence come from? And I said, I don't know. I think sometimes it's nurture and nature. My mother is a strong, for all the flaws that I may have with her and all the issues we may have sometimes, she's one of the strongest women I know. And I've derived so much strength from her and my grandmother and the women before her. The women in my family are strong. And then I know that I have great faith because of my dad. And while I've had problems with them, especially even through all of this, at the end of the, my dad's 80 this year. And I thought, I didn't talk to them all of last year. And I said, I miss him. I miss just the sound of it. He's 80. And I can't, somebody said, well, did you forgive them for never sharing this information with you? And I said, they were in the dark as much as I was. It's not that they had tons of information and they just said, we want a boy and let's not tell him.
Hey guys, it's Lisa with The Gays of Our Lives, and this week's episode is sponsored by my own CBD line through Denver CBD. It's actually the first one in town here that has vitamin D in it, and it's also helping with different causes. The strawberry flavor, 5% goes to Cancer Support Community. The orange flavor, 5% goes to the National MS Society. Use my code LISA20 and get 20% off your order.
even after I started this, my mom said, well, there are doctors out there that believe like this is not the answer and that you should have stayed a boy and that you're intersex and you shouldn't have transitioned. I know 15 women across the globe that have had to go through the same thing that I've gone through. So it's not like tons of us, but at the same time, this will blow your mind because we didn't talk about it early on. People will tell you all the time, I've never met an intersex person. I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it. You're pretty rare. Somebody said to me the other day, you're a unicorn. And I went, we're 2% of the global population. It's as common to be born intersex as it is to have the red hair gene.
Whoa.
Wow.
The medical community is just not talking about us and has never talked about us and has marginalized us and pushed us way into the dark.
Well, to a point where
you haven't heard about it that goes back to what we talked about the different species being created.
Yeah.
We make up a bulk of the population. Now, granted, because of the time frame and the decades and everything else, there are probably a portion of 30 and 40-year-olds that have no clue that they're intersex. And it's going to take something medically big for them to go even have that test to find out that they have that extra chromosome or that they may be.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, but on the same spectrum, because that information's PC throughout the internet, right? And I told my mom, I'm like, don't go searching for stuff on the internet. If somebody never put it on the internet, it's not going to be out there. If research is being done and the paper is never uploaded on the internet, you're never going to read about it. So what is out there is very PC and kind of piecemeally. And if you were to go read all that, you'd be like, she's nothing like me. I'm never going to have half the issues that she has. And that's not true. You may have all of them. You may have heart problems. You may be on that testosterone that they're saying is going to make your son more masculine. And he may have prostate cancer at 22 and be dead by 25.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the information is just not going to magically appear on the internet. So when people are like, I have no idea, I'm like, that doesn't surprise me in the least that you would know nothing about intersex. I think that's Kane's thing. He was like, I don't know how to explain this to people. How do you explain this to people?
Wow.
I used to, when I was younger, people were like, I've always dressed in men's clothing and, I'm just a butch lesbian, and I explained it. I was like, I don't know, maybe I have a half more chromosome or whatever that puts me more as a man. And I said that when I was younger as kind of I don't know, maybe this is it. I don't know. This is how I feel comfortable. I don't know, so I kind of, I don't know. I don't know if there's like more of that out there, like you said, that people just don't know.
Well, and then the spectrum, it always comes back to, I'm happy with my vessel and my new car body and that new car smell. I really like it a lot. But I date straight men. And so everybody from my mother to people that I meet in public will be like, can you explain that to me? I don't get that. And I'm like, sure. I like men, like straight, gay. That was an important lesson because earlier this year I was in a gay bar in Orlando and this guy approached me and he goes, you're really pretty. And I said, thanks. And you're sitting in this drag bar and you're thinking, I have no idea what they're thinking, right? My drag mother runs this drag bar. My sisters that I had from previous drag experiences are all on cast. I come to support them. They probably don't know if I'm a drag queen or trans or what, like I'm about to blow their mind. And then they say, what do you like? And I said, alpha men, straight alpha men. And he went, oh, okay. And he laughed. And I turned to my friend and I went, well, fuck. And he goes, why? And I said, I'm not having a lot of options with dating. I date straight men, but you have to go to the Craigslist or the Kick or to find people that are interested in trans. And then you have to kind of throw your story at them and be like, I don't identify as trans, but this is what I've gone through. And if you're willing to, and I said, it's convoluted. And I said, here, a guy walked up to me who was interested, and I just negated him by saying straight. And I said, where I should be going, I like alpha men, period. However you identify, it doesn't matter, because when we get in the bedroom, and this is what I told my mom, I said, this is what's difficult, I think, for people. But I said, if we get to the point where you're taking me to bed, you've probably already told me what gets you off. And I'm going to tell you what gets me off. And then because we like each other, we're going to get each other off. And it's not going to matter what's hanging off the front of our body, because he may be into that, or she may be into that, or they may not. But who cares? If they're not into it, but they really like you and they want to stoop you, they're going to. And I said, it's blind to me sometimes. And it's blind, and that's hard. You know, you go to talk about being intersex and people are like, well, tell me about your sex life. Like, are you dating trans people? And you're like, are you paying my bills? Why do you need to know that information?
Exactly.
Like, I'm female. I'm more than willing to share my story with you. And I'll even talk about the sex stuff because that's education too. But why do we have to be pigeonholed to dating within our own community or dating within our sub-communities? Or none of that matters.
Yeah. No, I get, well, so my fiance is a cisgender female who identifies as queer. And I feel like, genuinely, I mean, to be fair, like, I feel like that's what I've always been attracted to is straight female. So I get like where that's like your mindset too.
Yeah.
And, like, I was kind of pigeonholed in that for a while where I was like, well, I know that I want to date straight women because every time I try and date someone who's attracted to trans, I almost feel fetishized a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes like, and you know, that's like a whole thing in not just the trans community and intersex, but like,
yeah,
even like butch lesbians get that kind of fetishized thing. And I feel like that was a huge thing when I was dating, where I was like, I have to like figure out how to like just open myself up to someone. And, you know, and it was really hard because you're right. You constantly feel like I have to set a boundary, but I have to find someone who likes me and likes the same stuff, you know?
Well, and then you know, I met a friend this week, a new friend, and he's gay and he's super cute and is single. And we were joking one night and we were drinking, we're all joking and having fun. And I was like, would you date an intersex female? And he was like, no, I'm not really into that. And I was like, but I still have a clitter dick. Like, I still have a D. Like, and that's what you like. But I mean, I get that aspect of it, but then there are gay men that do like that, right? And then there's straight men that are like, I think it's cute that you call it a clitter dick and a game show buzzer, and I'm not even really going to go near it. And then there are people that are like, I'm totally going near it. And you're like, I'm confused, right? I'm confused as my mother is, but you find what works for you and you meet people that are interested and you go from there. And that's a whole nother show for you guys. It's dating within the community. I mean,
well, absolutely. And you know, that's what I was just thinking. We absolutely are gonna have you back on. I mean, we love it. I mean, you just are helping us because I mean, honestly, I knew zero about intersex. And like you said, hermaphrodite. That's what I assumed it was.
That's what a lot of people say.
Yeah.
But that's sex organs, and that's not what ours is a gender issue. And then and that's confusing to people, right? Because then you say ours is more about sex, but not sex organs. And so you say sex, and most people go, oh. You know, even a lot of people on TikTok that were commenting on my video that got all these views will say, I thought that was hermaphrodism. And I'm like, I've explained this in the comments 6 times. Do y'all not read all the other comments? Because we've already touched on this. But then I'm like, but people don't. So that means I'm going to have to repeat myself. And if I don't repeat myself, they're moving forward saying, I met a hermaphrodite the other day. And you're like, no, that's not what it is at all. Right? And you even talk about, you know, somebody said to me the other day, they were like, oh, so you have Down syndrome. And I went, no, I don't. That is one of the 39 variations within that spectrum. Yeah. That's not my issue. And even if you put a room full of XXYs together, remember, you'd still have mosaic XXYs, you'd have regular XXYs. You'd have ones that identify as male, ones that identify as female, ones that identify as both, people that are non-binary, people that have all the issues I do. Maybe somebody just has lupus. Maybe somebody doesn't have any of those issues. Maybe somebody is having the doorism issues and has lost their teeth. Maybe some have it. I mean, we are so different and broad within that spectrum. And then that's just kind of a sub-community of all the other intersex variations. And they may suffer from all. So, I mean, it's
it's like
best.
A lot.
Yeah. So, and then that's where you kind of go back to, it's not just, I was going to draw you a diagram today, and then I was like, I don't have any colored pencils. But I was like, I just like people to picture a tree that looks female and say that's your XX, and a tree that looks male with like an extra root coming off, and that's your XY. And you have that torn, tattered rope bridge in between them.
Yeah.
And you could be anywhere on that rope bridge dealing with loose nails, no plank, plank with rope frayed. Maybe there's a fire going on, but intersex is anywhere on that bridge in between.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Well, when you come back, you have to draw the picture. No.
I'm going to paint it and sell it. Girl needs some money. I'll be like, oh, I'm an artist now. No, I'm kidding. I like your backdrop. You changed it again.
Yeah.
Well, we do.
So we have a segment at the end of our show we call the Gays Ask.
Okay.
With the K.
Gays Ask. Sorry. Get that K in there. My pronunciation, I miss it sometimes.
The Gays Ask.
Exactly.
There you go.
And basically, it's a series of 5 questions that are really simple, and you know, we give you the option to not answer them, but they're really fun.
So it's kind of like Bravo's, like Andy's Clubhouse. Like I can be like, I plead the fifth.
Yes, absolutely.
Clearly, if I'm willing to talk about my game show Buzzer Clitter Dick, I'll answer it.
I would say you seem to be pretty open. Okay, so my first question, going back on your history at Disney, what do you think is the best part of any Disney amusement park?
I mean, I'm an entertainer, and every time I go, everybody wants to do all the rides, and those are great, right? And they are great, and every park offers kind of something different. But as an entertainer, I gravitate towards whatever the new parade is, and because that was my wheelhouse, right? I did characters, parades, and shows, and so that is a celebration of everything, right? To be able to sit on the parade route, to watch people get excited about it, to see the new floats or the dancers come down. We used to do this thing in parade where usually you would do, when I worked there, you would do park sets. Now they have kind of, you're either in parades or you do park sets, or maybe you do breakfast or whatever. But when I was there, you did everything. You would go in and do a character breakfast, go back and have lunch, do day parade, go do some afternoon sets, stay for night parade. Maybe you'd go do Fantasmic. Like you were there all day long in fur, out of fur, whatever. And so being friends with all the characters, wink, wink, because you know, they're all real. And you would meet a kid maybe on set, right? Like you'd be out in the morning doing your sets and you would see a kid come in, or an adult, and you would think they're adorable, right? They have this life issue. You would meet them. Maybe they were with Give Kids a World, or maybe it was their first and only trip to Disney, or maybe they weren't given an expendable lifetime frame or whatever. And you would find that people would go back into the zoo, into the what we call the character zoo, and they would go back and say, hey, I was at Main Street and I met this kid and he's adorable, and look for him all day today. You'd be like, he's wearing a Mickey Mouse sweatshirt and he's got green shoes on. It was all about the details. And then you would say, we told him to sit at this location in parade. So he's going to be sitting here with his family, or she's going to be sitting here with her family, and her name is Michaela, right? And so then everybody in parade would stop and wave at Michaela, or kiss Michaela, or say, hey, Michaela, we're glad to have you here, right? And you would find you're doing it every day. And then these people would come back, you know, and you'd see them 10 years later, and they beat whatever they had, and they remember that moment. And then they, of course, you know, that would spurn people into coming back and joining the character department because they had such fond memories. And then pictures would surface of them with Cinderella, right? That they had taken at like 4. And now that Cinderella is maybe the fairy godmother. because she's older, or maybe she's portraying something else. And they're like, you look very familiar to me. And I feel such a connection. And they show you a picture and you go,
Oh my God.
that was me 10 years ago, right? And so I love the parades. And I'll say to people, put me on the parade route. You can go ride all the rides you want, but I'm going to watch parade today. Because that's my happy place when I go back to these parks. And the people in them, those are some of your best performers. As an actress, somebody told me once, I was all about making movies and film. I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to become famous, right? And I started to hear about stories like Edie Falco was on Broadway for decades before she did The Sopranos. Decades. And she was storied and nuanced and only got The Sopranos by happenstance. And I remembered learning that lesson of there are people out there that are passionate with their talent and their entertainment, and they may never have the opportunity to be on television or a Broadway show or a movie, but that doesn't mean they're any less passionate or talented. And so I believe big in supporting your community arts, your community visuals. And then when you go to theme parks, sure, they may be a little ego-filled that they're playing a princess on a float, but that doesn't diminish their talent or their passion. And they're coming back day after day and getting on that float or standing in a room for an hour to hug your kid and hug every other kid and give you memories and lifetime, like, value that.
Yeah.
Because without them, you wouldn't be entertained and it would just be rides. So that's my go-to. Sorry, that's a long story, but
I love that.
that's my Disney story of where I like to go when I go back.
Awesome.
I just came up with a new one because you talk about your game show buzzer dick. If you could be on any game show, what would it be and why?
That's hard. I think I've always loved Family Feud. I think the antics and what comes out of people's mouth under pressure is funny. I think but I think it would be fun to be on Family Feud with members of my family. And even though I don't think the prize money is what it used to be, we could all probably use $20,000 and split it among our siblings. And I just think it's fun and funny. And I think that would be a fun one to be on.
Okay, side note on that. Which host would you have on the Family Feud?
Oh.
Richard Dawson. I mean, you have to have the original one, right? I like Steve Harvey. And I know Richard Dawson is dead. But, he was your typical dirty old man in the 70s,
Louis?
right? Like Richard Dawson?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Louis did it too, didn't he? Louis Anderson hosted
Yeah, I
the
think
Family.
he did do it for a while, right? And then there was another gentleman that did it in the 80s, and I think he committed suicide, I heard. That he had blonde hair and...
I don't know. I was hoping you'd say Louis. That's the only reason I asked. Sorry. He's a friend of mine. I love him. And
he's
so
great. Louis Anderson's great. And I love that show that he's been doing recently. I haven't seen it in the last week or two, but Baskets I thought was great for him.
Yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, it went off air.
So is it 5 questions each? Let's go.
No,
You're good. No,
It's one each. Okay.
My favorite question that I like to ask, and we get like a lot of crazy answers. So really think about this one. If you could have any superpower, known or unknown, what would it be?
So going back to the fact that I like men,
yeah,
and I also am super mischievous, if you couldn't tell.
Love it.
I have always, my answer to this for the last 10 years has always been invisibility. But I would be doing things like hanging out in NFL locker rooms. It would be your total Weezer Clarice moment from Still Magnolias. I would be in there with my mirror. Well, I wouldn't have to. I'd be invisible. I'd be right up close and personal to everybody in that locker room. And then I would do things, when I'm not in locker rooms or at like Michael Phelps' house in the swimming pool. I would do things like I would go to a funeral and I would go to an open casket and because you'd still have your voice, And I think I would pick the body up. I think it'd be really cute to pick the body up and kind of have it dance out of the funeral and be, like Ghost, have it talk to its wife and be like, hey, girl. And then, yes, there would probably be a lot of bodies in Orlando behind some like abandoned warehouse, but that would be a huge celebration of life. And maybe it wouldn't be so, I would be doing stuff like that. So invisibility.
That is different. That is absolutely different. I loved it.
For sure. So if you could have dinner with anybody, who would it be and why?
How many are coming to this dinner party? And do I have to cook? That's the first question.
You definitely don't have to cook.
No.
One of my favorite, when you're growing up and you're in school, they always ask you to like pick a favorite president. And I always was drawn to Abraham Lincoln. And I think it would be great to sit down with him and just pick his brain on everything, from general wisdom to metaphors to what he had to deal with. Like, where was his mind at when everybody was knocking at his door, asking him to ban slavery, and knowing that it was going to divide this country? And not saying that I'm not supporting slavery, so that's not what I'm saying in this question, this answer, but just, I want to talk to one of the great presidents and figure out how is it different from what we go through today, right? We're so divided today, even within our own community. And I just want to talk to somebody and be like, how did that affect your legacy? And maybe now that you're gone and you know what your trajectory was, were you fearful that you were going to be killed? Did you think was that even in your wheelhouse when you were in the presidency? Were you always on high alert that something was going to happen to you or Mary or your children? Like, I just think that would be, it would be a long dinner with maybe cognac and cigars afterwards. But
well,
that's a great answer.
Awesome.
Well, and then you look at also like, so then not only is he one of like the big history shakers, but then it was rumored he was like the original gay president, and that is like, I would have like 1,000 questions about. I'm like, so that one bodyguard everybody hears about, like, you know what I mean?
And talking about that, George Washington, I read recently, was rumored to be XXY.
What?
Our first president.
Wow.
And because, now they can go back and test your DNA. We've got all this stuff that you can do. And so there was an article that came out a couple of years ago about people that were born intersex. People in history that have been born intersex. And there's been a long-standing rumor that Jamie Lee Curtis is XXY and intersex. She's never talked about it. And why would she need to? I understand the career boundaries and everything else. It would be very interesting to go back and be like, are you? Like, I can see it, right? You see that she was, even in the 70s, she was very androgynous and had a rocky relationship with her mother, Tippi Hedren. You wonder, does that stem from some of these issues you would have been facing back then that nobody had any idea about? So I've long heard that. In that same article, it said Tom Cruise is XXY. And you go, and then I read George Washington and I thought, boy, would I love to be on that research panel. Because what a shakeup that would be for people to be like, what? Our first president was intersex?
Yeah.
So I'll have to find it and share that article with you, because some people read it and they're like, there's no way. But then you're like, how do you know? Like, how would you know?
Well, and I don't know if I know of any intersex person, but I bet you I do, and just
You
don't know.
probably do. And they may not know it, honestly.
Yeah.
Right? They may not know it. Or they may, I feel like there are a lot more intersex in Australia and the UK, but they're very progressive in their research.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, not so progressive. So would you know? No. And one of the things we were talking about last year when I wasn't talking to my parents, one of the reasons I had a big fallout is my parents know a lot of people, right? My dad was the president of a private school in Orlando that I graduated from. And he knows everybody in education because we'd moved around a lot as a kid, when I was a kid. And I got a little incensed because here I am going through this big part of my story, and they were sharing everything else that I'd gone through, but then they weren't saying I had to transition.
Mm-hmm.
And my older brother said, "You're denying her existence. She can't come back and visit you because your next door neighbor is going to be like, who's that? Right? She looks like all the other kids, but," and then they're going to be like, what happened to Bradford? And Craig was like, my older brother was like, we can't do this to her, right? That is a huge part of this story moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't talk to him for a year. I didn't think they got it. I thought, I'm never going to talk to him again. And then when I started talking to him again in February, because I just missed my dad and I missed my mom too, and I decided I can have conversations with them that are not so deep, right? We can keep them at a surface level and just talk about The Crown on Netflix and Easter coming, and we don't have to go in depth. And now, I'm having conversations like, what do I like in the bedroom and dating? And I'm like, where is this coming from? But they've made a point of saying, hey, we ran into so-and-so and they asked about you and we told them your whole story, and that now that you're going through this and you're advocating, and they're just blown away and they want to connect with you and talk to you. And I say back to them, I'm like, isn't that a great feeling? Isn't that a great feeling that you can say, my kid is superseding every expectation?
Yeah.
And we have her, right? Doesn't everybody want to do that? My kid, it doesn't matter how you view them. They're still alive, and this is part of their story, right? And so that's kind of been nice just in the last couple of months to kind of hear that and kind of feel that recognition, and so many people do want to make their parents proud and and I struggled with that all last year. I feel like I'm doing these great things and I'm moving forward. And we could talk about this in another episode too, but I just wanted to share it because it did give me a lot of press early on in January in this year. Being born in Alabama, I had my name change done legally in Florida last July. And we had talked about how I chose that name. But when I went to go change my gender marker on my birth certificate in Alabama, they require that you had sexual reassignment surgery to change your gender on your birth certificate.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have to. I just had to take estrogen. So now I'm fighting the state of Alabama to change that. So my friend that I worked with at Disney, we were talking about that kind of community support. She's a lawyer now and teaches at UCF. And she said, my kids need a practical case to kind of work on and learn. And yours would be perfect. And what if we convince a Florida judge to sign off on your birth certificate gender change? And then you could go back to Alabama and be like, Florida recognizes it. Why won't you? And then maybe we can do it that way. So UCF law students got involved. It was a great teaching moment to be able to educate them about intersex. We then found out that there were no laws on the books in Florida for the intersex community. There were for trans, there were for gay, but nothing petition-wise for intersex. So these students worked really hard, looked at other states, drew up a petition. We signed it. We went before the judge in January. That judge was up for re-election, and he came back after a few weeks and said, I'm not saying you haven't struggled and that you're not going through all this stuff, but I can't sign off on it. And so we thought about taking it before an appeals court prior to COVID. And then the trans community came back and said, we've made such strides in Florida for the trans community in the last 5 to 6 years. And we're still combating so much stuff like recognition at work. A case like yours could set us back 3 or 4 years. And I'm sure you wouldn't want to do that to your fellow community. Right? So they laid that guilt at my feet, and I was like, oh, I get that. And so they were like, we think you should just refile in a more openly verse county and get a judge that we know will sign off on it. So then COVID came into play, so we're all kind of like, where are we? But the goal now is to file in Miami-Dade County, where there is a more trans presence, right? In Lauderdale and Miami. They think it'll get signed off on, and then I'll just look at going back to Alabama and saying, look, it's recognized somewhere else.
Yeah.
Please just change my birth certificate. Because without it, can't update my passport, can't get a bank loan, can't, you know, so like things that people take for granted. So that's kind of where I'm still advocating, but that's something I'm working for right now. And then just being on the board for Come Out with Pride Orlando. So definitely have a lot on my plate.
Yeah.
For sure.
Like,
All right, Avery, ask your last one.
Okay.
Okay, so the last one is a little bit more of a challenge because I really like throwing curveballs at people.
All right, let's see.
It has a 50% success rate right now.
Okay.
What is your best dad joke?
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
So dad jokes kind of turn me on, if we're being honest.
Oh my God, you can do.
And I've heard some really, I'm going to tell you two, because they're my two favorite, right? So I shared one with the gay guy that I was talking about earlier, right? That's staying here. His name's Brian. He's adorable. If you're in the Baton Rouge area, look him up. He's a catch. He was complaining that he has a dad bod the other day. And I had heard on TikTok that you shouldn't call it a dad bod. So when next time somebody says, oh, you have a great dad bod, you should say, it's not a dad bod. It's a father figure.
Oh, that's good.
That's cute, right? So it's a fatherly figure. It's a father figure. It's not a dad bod. But my favorite one that I've heard recently is, and this is right up there with dad jokes, if you think about them, is, let me see if I can do it with a straight face. What does a horny frog say?
What?
Rub it.
Oh, damn, that's up there with like the drunk dad jokes. You know what I mean? They're like,
Can you imagine your dad be like, what's a horny frog say? Rub it.
That's good.
So,
Hey, what is your social media so we can put that out there too?
So my social media on every platform, on TikTok, which I would love if you're on TikTok, right? Because 700 million people use it. And I'm trying to get 10,000 followers by my 45th birthday, which is June 15th. I know I don't look it. Is Miss America. So Miss America, the number 19 and the word never. So Miss America 19 never. It used to be a part of my drag name. People always ask why I chose it, and it's easy enough. I'm not 24, which is the age that you age out to be in that pageant. And I was born both genders. So I was never going to be Miss America. So Miss America 19 never. And then that's my IG. That's my, you can find me on Facebook that way. So all very public profiles. People are worried that I'll get a stalker. And my mother used to tell me, you're not famous until you have a stalker. So bring it. Like, where you can pee on my front door. I don't care. Like, I don't even have a house. So Miss America 19 never on every platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You've really helped us, and I'm hoping our audience is going to learn a lot from this. Because
and then
I know
one more thing, just because we're talking about it, and I would love if you would share it. I don't think anybody reads it. I think I do really do it for my own sanity. And there are only about 30 posts, and they're probably about a 2-minute read each. But if you want to find out more about XXY and what I've suffered through my whole life, on WordPress is my blog, and it's Metamorphing Into Me. So you can Google either Juleigh Mayfield or Metamorphing Into Me, and that should come up for you. It's on WordPress. Go read it. There's a lot of great information on there, and it may save somebody else's life. So feel free to reach out to me on any platform. I talk to everybody. I've never met somebody that doesn't become a friend. So come
That's
at
awesome.
me. Right.
Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate you. And if you guys want to be on the Gays of Our Lives, we have a contact me page at www.laughs.life.
Where's that link at? Right here? Or is it going to be up here?
Somewhere.
I say usually puts it like down there in the
usually down there.
For me. And then you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and kind of TikTok. but not really TikTok because we are not good at TikToking like the great.
I'm good at TikTok, so I'll promote you on
Juleigh
TikTok.
Mayfield's TikTok.
Right, Miss America 19 ever.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, ladies. I'm
Bye.
blessed. I'm blessed to have met you, and I look forward to the future. And thank
We'll
you
see
for
you
sharing.
soon.
Thank you for sharing our story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been Gays of Our Lives. Make sure to check out the gays online at www.laughs.life.